traditionally known as colonial America. We didn't go through a whole bunch of it, but we established colonies in two different places. In Plymouth, about Puritans, in Jamestown, about profit. And those were the two really types of colonies that are going to begin our country. They're either coming not for religious freedom, and please, I hope you understood that. There was no freedom in those places. If you didn't think like they did, they made you leave. And then Jamestown was a colony created for profit. Just if you have it at home, and because we're not going to watch any more movies, and certainly not Disney movies, but if you have the Disney movie Pocahontas, you should go home and watch that and pay particular attention to the beginning when they sing about Virginia Company and they're going for gold and God and glory, and they think they're going to find diamonds in the streets and all those things. And in one particular song where the governor is singing about gold, 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 and we know that they don't find it, so they have to figure out something else. And the thing they figure out that's something else will be the growing of tobacco, and that will be what saves Virginia Company. So we go along, and I'm going to speed this story up really fast. We go along eventually from those two productive colonies into 13 major colonies with a population that is quadrupling. Our people are very healthy because there's wide open spaces to live. We don't have a lot of manufacturing. We also have the highest cost of living. Our people are per capita doing better than anybody else in Europe. We are moving along and creating these great economic centers like Boston and Philadelphia and New York City. And then in the middle of all this, we have this war called the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War are the French and the Indians together fighting against the British and the colonies. And it's an extension of a global war known as the 7 Years' War. So the 7 Years' War begins in Europe, but it moves into the colonies. The colonists say, this really isn't our fight. Like, we're not fighting this fight for you. British, you guys started that in Europe. You should just stay away and keep us out of it. The British know that they can't win the continent of North America. And this is what I think is hard about learning U.S. history, because we know how it ends, right? We know at the end what's going to happen, that the English are going to control North America. But it wasn't...
Leaders with the last names beginning with A through D, please report to the comments.
I'm going to have to be careful what I say since I'm recording myself. I can't get so exasperated. We know how the story ends, and we know in this fight between the French and the British for North America that the British win. But that isn't a given. And especially it wasn't a given at the beginning of this, because the French had the Indians on their side. And the reason the French had the Indians on their side is that the French dealt with the Indians in a very different way than the English. The English's goal was to annihilate them and to push them. The French just wanted to trade. The French set up trading posts all up and down the Wabash and Ohio rivers. Has anybody ever been to the Rendezvous in Vincennes? That's what that is. A rendezvous was a call out from the French to Indians to bring fur pelts to this area. French didn't trap them. French didn't look for them. French were very economically savvy and said, we'll just get other people to do it and then pay them. A couple of years ago, there was a movie, The Revenant. I think I can never say it the right way. It's an excellent movie. I don't like the guy in it, Leo DiCaprio. I think he's so gross. But it's a great movie about that idea of these fur trappers and traders. So the French dealt with the Indians as trading partners. Not to say that they traded as equals, because the French certainly took advantage of what the Indians were able to do and traded thousands of dollars worth of pelts for beads and guns and alcohol. But the Indians worked well with the French and didn't kill them. So when this war begins in the colonies, the French and Indian versus the British, the Indians will begin fighting against the colonists. And the colonists will say, this isn't our fight, this isn't our battle. The British say, we're going to lose and you're going to get attacked by the Indians if you don't help us. So the colonists will join in with the British in fighting this French and Indian War. And for most historians, that war really is as, and maybe even a little teeny tiny bit more important than the American Revolution, because it sets the stage for what the colonists can do and how these colonists can work together eventually to overthrow the British Crown. So war ends in 1763. And in order to keep the Indians from rising up again, they tell the colonists that you can't go past this line. They'll draw what's called the Proclamation Line of 1763, and the king will say, you can't go past this line. And the colonists will say, why can't we go past this line? We just fought to go past this line. So as most of our ancestors did when they were told what they couldn't do, they do exactly the opposite. And again, for those of you that have that mentality, like you tell me something to do, I'm going to do the exact opposite, comes from a long line of your historical ancestors that always did the opposite of what they were told to do by a king, a crown. So we start moving. And that upsets the crown. And so the crown, the British crown, will start to make laws against the colonist. And those laws will be twofold. One, those laws like you can't do this, you can't do that. And then the second set of laws will be, holy cow, that war cost us a lot of money, and we now need you to pay it back. And again, that's why we need to think the bigger picture. The 7 Years' War was fought all around the globe. It was fought in China, it was fought in India, between the French and the British, and it was fought in the colonies. And now the British crown needs money. And so they look over to the colonies that are prosperous, have a great economy, and they say, you need to pay us back. And the colonists said, pay you back for what? Because we didn't ask for this war here. We didn't ask to be a part of it. You just made it here. We don't feel like we should pay you back. The crown says, yes, you should. And so thus begins what I hope, if you don't know anything about the Revolutionary War, you know about all these acts, the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, and all those things about taxing things that the colonists used to pay back the crown. And here again, I don't want to spend too much time going into taxes. Here again is the important thing to remember about this revolution. The taxes were to raise revenue, not to pay for things. So all of you that have vehicles, your vehicle pays a wheel tax. And if you pull out your registration, you can look at it. It says wheel tax. You're taxed for using the road. And those tax dollars are supposed to go back to pay for the road. Our tax dollars go to pay for things. It's not to raise revenue for the state of Indiana. It pays for things that the state of Indiana uses, like firefighters and roads and hospitals and teacher salary. So we are paying for a service. We're getting a service. We pick up the phone, we call 911, somebody answers. This fee and these taxes were to generate money. And the colonists said, you can't do that. Number one, you can't just make us pay taxes without asking us and giving us consent in the government. And thus begins this, again, no taxation without representation that begins the American Revolution. It's also important to know that that was not the goal. The goal when we start fighting in Lexington and Concord was not independence. It was a rebellion. It was open rebellion. We're fighting against you. We're committing treason. But we don't want to be this own country. We like being Englishmen. We like being part of the British Crown. We just want to be treated the same as if we lived in England. And the idea such that, I'm going to write you guys a pass, the idea such that because we are English citizens, we should have representation. And then we move forward, hang on. Sorry for those of you listening, I gotta pause because I have to write a pass. And I can't do two things at once. And you are at 9:25. All right, here you go. Pass. Thank you. All right, so we continue to keep going. Oh, let me add Scott's to that name. Let me just add Scott. And I'm just going to put Randy on there because he's coming. Scott and Randy. Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you. All right, So we go through all these beginning, Lexington, Concord, we fight that. Anybody ever been to Boston? So Boston has, I gave them the pass, just put it in the box, Randy. Thanks, hun. So Lexington and Concord is the shot heard around the world, the beginnings of the revolution, takes place in two little villages. They're looking for two people. They're looking for John Hancock, who is the money behind everything. He's got a lot of money. And they're looking for Sam Adams John Hancock. Yeah, John Hancock and Sam Adams to arrest for treason. There's also an armory in Lexington, I think. I can't remember if it's Lexington or Concord. And an armory is weapons. So the British march out that way. They meet up in this town square. Don't know who fired the shot first, but they start shooting. And then the colonist militia will chase them all the way back to Boston. And will hiding. And again, this is a significant part of this, that the British are marching straight in rows down a road, and the colonists are hiding on the other side of walls, taking pot shots at them. So as we continue to move forward, Bunker Hill happens, and all these battles are going to happen, but we're still working towards somehow negotiating a peace. All we want is representation in Parliament. We just want to elect people so that we can have a vote. King keeps saying no. And eventually we get to the point where we say, okay, this isn't going to work anymore. We have to separate these two places. And Thomas Jefferson will write the Declaration of Independence. And that sends us to this part of independence. That doesn't happen until 1776. Lexington and Concord happens in 1773. And those of you keeping track, the Boston Tea Party, where we throw tea, that happens in 1773. So this is a long process. It's not something that happens overnight. And for all of history up to 2020, the only successful revolution in the world that has been successful and sustained itself is the American Revolution. No other one has ever been successful. They will last for a couple of years and then fall apart. And for the most part, they go back to a government that was much more autocrat, strict than it was before. So there's a couple of things, again, that should be noted as we think about our American Revolution. One, it was successful. Two, that really wasn't the goal when we got started. And three, we do it even with two things. We do it with writing stuff down, papers, proclamations, and then we also do it militarily. Okay? So today, we're going to look at one of my favorite little things about history is people that love history that make satires with songs that you know. I think this is a Justin Timberlake song from a gazillion years ago called Too Late to Apologize, except it's with revolutionary figures. So we're going to watch it together, and I'm going to talk through it. And then your assignment is to look through that, watching that video and looking at symbols, people, and just analyzing what all that video means. All right? So let me get it pulled up, and we'll watch it together. And I will help you with the symbols. But let's hold off on opening that till we're all the way ready, okay? And it is one of my favorite little videos. I promise you won't be able to sing it the same way again. Okay, do I not have it on here? I'm on the wrong day. Here we go. All right. So some of the people, I hope that you know who they are, that you can figure out who they're supposed to be in the video. I'll help you with some of the other ones, again, because this is a review.
waves, you can't hear a sound. There's no fair trials, no train, no liberties, no tea. We've colonized America, we won't stand for tyranny. Okay, and it's too late to apologize.
So that's Thomas Jefferson.
I said it's too late to apologize.
And he's the writer of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. There's Sam Adams. And that's Ben Franklin.
Your foolish tax, read the acts, and they just won't do. We wanna make it clear we believe this much is true. All men were created with certain unalienable rights. Among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's too late to apologize. It's too late. I said it's too late to apologize. It's too late.
With the last stream beginning with A through D, please report to the call.
Half across the globe and we're standing on ground.
So, I know, I like that a lot. I have closed captions in there, so you should be able to hit the closed caption and hear and read it while you're watching. So a couple of things to think about while you're watching that. The symbols that are in that movie, and again, I don't want to be condescending, but I just want to make sure that you understand. The whole idea of the grapes, that's kind of this idea of like somebody feeding you grapes. So that idea of privilege. The little picture that burns, that's a picture of King George. The weird part where he is playing the violin or the fiddle, whichever you prefer. One of the difficulties of the American Revolution is that we're 13 distinctly different colonies. And at the beginning of the Revolution, the only colony that's really getting jacked around is Massachusetts. Everybody else is doing fine. And somehow we have to get all 13 colonies to say, this is worthwhile. And I take that kind of music thing as them spreading the word, the music, all around the colonies, and it showed specific things like playing upon. To me, that's what that means symbolically. And then at the end, where they're that whatever word you want to attach to that band that they were, punk, emo, grunge, whatever, is the idea of them being revolutionary, right? That wherever you look at that, that group of people are now different. They're revolutionary. So those are the type of symbols that I'm asking you to think about and look at. And again, if you open, which I can't open, again, this is in Kami, and it asks you to look at those different things in that video, what that images are, what they represent. One of the other parts is when they're doing the metal work, the blacksmith, and then at one point really quickly you see a guy with a musket that's another idea that symbolizing that we're actually physically arming ourselves. So we're arming ourselves with words, all the men sitting at the table. We're also arming ourselves with military equipment. Okay? So any questions about how to fill that out or what that means? I think once we look at it, let me see if I can get it open myself. Hold on a minute. Let me close it. I think if I open it more than once, I can't see it ever again. And I can't even see anything on this. Here we go. All right, so directions. Watch, and you can watch that back again. Make note of the elements of the video. Write a paragraph 6 to 8 on each one of those things. You don't have to do it 6 to 8 on all of those. About whether this video accurately represents the framing and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. If you are trying to explain the contents to someone who doesn't know, would you use this video? Be sure to include evidence as you craft your opinion. So the first one, characters. Who are those characters? How can you tell? So that was, again, some of the characters in the video is telling a version of the creation of the Declaration of Independence. And then symbols. This is the one I'm really going to look at. Complex story. The video uses a number of symbols. Pick at least 5 symbols. Explain what they mean. You can do this in bullet point, what each one of them means. And then quotes. 3 to 5 quotes that you think are particularly important part of the song. Okay? And again, if you go back to the video, you should be able to click the closed caption and be able to do that closed caption. All right, we'll work on this today and then tomorrow in class. All right, any questions about assignment or what we're doing or how we're working on that? And I have, for those of you that, I don't know if you can attach your earbuds to listen to that, I have in those bottom 2 drawers old
Seniors with the last name beginning with H through K, please report to the comments.
I have in those bottom 2 drawers over there like old 3rd grade headphones if you need to listen to it on with headphones and if you don't have your own with you. Okay, so questions about any of that? Questions? All righty.